exchanges, energy, and credit entitled Brexit and Other International Developments Affecting the U.S. Derivatives Market will now come to order. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. This is a very, very important hearing. The very future of our international financing, cross-border financing, is very critical because of what's happening concerning Brexit. So today we really want to examine it very thoroughly so we come to a very succinct understanding with supreme knowledge as to how the situation involving the European Union's divorce with Great Britain affects our United States financial industry. It is most important that when we leave this hearing today, we will have one resolve, and that is to make sure what is happening with Brexit and the European Union does not, will not, and cannot put our United States financial industry in a weakened position. It is important that the United States financial industry remain in its position as the most significant, most important, most influential financial system in the world, because the world is depending on that and us making sure of it. There are some threats out there with this move in Brexit. And that's why we in this committee realize our responsibility as members of Congress to hear from you, to hear from our market participants, for you are the ones that engage in this. And we've got to remember that this is an $843 trillion, not million, not billion, but trillion-dollar piece of the world's economy. And let me assure you that the United States financial system must remain number one in this strengthening position. Now, there are some very important facts I want to go over so you can see where we are. First of all, as we look at Brexit and other international developments, we know without a doubt that there are 27 members of the EU that are bracing for Great Britain's exit from the Union. And the UK approaches a leadership crisis within its Prime Minister's departure, and she is still at the helm, but there are so many things that are bubbling up underneath. Now, it's important for me to share with you that in 2016, the CFTC completed, that's the Commodities, Futures, and Traders Commission, completed a 3-year negotiation for an equivalence agreement. It's very important to note that prior to this point, it was the European Union that was our equivalency partner. And this agreement on the regulatory treatment of derivatives clearinghouses with the European Union. And this agreement ensured this, that both the EU and U.S. clearinghouses operate at the same high standards and at a comparable level of cost to their participants. Last year, As the EU prepared for the potential impact of Brexit, the EU Parliament passed the European Market Infrastructure Regulation, EMIR 2.2. I want to pause there. EMIR 2.2. And we have got to examine EMIR 2.2 thoroughly this morning, because we on this committee are convinced that EMIR 2.2 presents a very clear and present danger to our United States financial industry. When they passed EMIR 2.2, it unilaterally and automatically scrapped the 2016 Equivalence Agreement. EMIR 2.2 increases oversight of the EU and third country clearinghouses, and it has significant implications, as I said, for the industry in the United States. Some of the most extreme parts of this suggested policy is, number one, administrative fees charged to clearinghouses in other countries in exchange for oversight, and we'll get back to that, by the EU. Comparable compliance discounts instead of grandfathering, which means that even when granted, you will get a discount of 15, 20, or 35% of fees. Also, a very complex tiering regime, where the difference between Tier 1 and Tier 2 is fees that are as much as 7 times higher. Tier 1 is 50,000 euro. Tier 2 is 350,000 euro, 7 times higher. However, the largest concern is a possible relocation provision requiring that all clearing move to the EU, either by the letter of the law or by making it so expensive that companies outside the EU will be priced out of competition. And everyone in this room knows that financial instruments do not operate in a vacuum. What happens in the EU and the UK will ripple through financial markets, just as our decisions here in our country have ramifications for them. So it is my hope today that with our discussions and conversations that we will have today, that we can begin to explore and better understand what Brexit and the associated geopolitical developments in Europe and elsewhere will mean for the derivatives market in the United States. And with that, I would like to now recognize my ranking member, the other distinguished Mr. Scott from Georgia, for 5 minutes.